Naomi, thank you for your time and joining us. And beside me, Kat will be joining us with the questions as well. Kat is from Butterfly Media. She helped to promote this event and she's done an amazing job. So thank you, Kat, as well. Naomi, um, back to you. I'd like to find out how it all began. Where did you start? How did all eventuate into Red Balloon? Where do you think it all started?
I'm a little bit of an anomaly, I realize. And sometimes I say to my husband, I'm not sure where I came from because, I was brought up in middle class Australia and went to the local high school and went off to university and studied a Bachelor of Commerce and thought I was always going to have a corporate career. My mother was a career woman. She worked in computing for her whole career, actually, and she worked for a great entrepreneur by the name of Lindsay Cattermole, who had the business Aspect Computing. And my mum used to drag me to her work events, and she would say to me things like, well, if Lindsay can run a business, you can run a business. So back in those, really at those university stage, my mum was in my ear saying you could do this. So I guess that was my role models, and which is pretty incredible given that I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. In fact, my dad's an engineer, my mum was a systems analyst, so they're very, very technical, and I don't know where I got my creative gene from. But I worked in corporate Australia for probably about 15 years, working on big brands like KPMG, IBM. I worked at Apple, I worked in Ansett, and I was on the team that launched Frequent Flyer in Australia. So I had this whole experience. But when I had kids, I wanted more flexibility. And, a bit back to the point that I was talking about cash flow, I started a freelance marketing group and I would quote on jobs and this is before the internet and freelance and all that sort of stuff. I quote and hope, and it was either feast or famine. And often I do these incredible marketing plans and people would pick the eyes out of it. And in that process, though, I realized what businesses need more than anything is customers. And if I could solve that problem, I think I was on a business winner. So as a result, I ended up creating one of the first marketplaces in Australia way back in 2001. There was eBay and Amazon, and we were in a completely different space. The idea isn't my own in terms of experiences. That came out of a concept in the UK called Red Letter Days, which was a catalogue and call centre business. But the value that I delivered was actually creating an online marketplace. And as I said, it was one of the first in the world. And what we did was effectively create a brand for a community that didn't know that they were a community. And we chose gifting because it was an incremental opportunity for most of our experienced suppliers. They can't take their hot air balloon or their jet boat into a corporate and say, would you buy some vouchers for that? Whereas as a united front with a brand, a trusted brand, we do that on their behalf. So yeah, I guess my journey to entrepreneurship was around flexibility, having a career when I had children, but ultimately I found my purpose in reading customer stories, and that's when it really, really took off. I thought I was just going to have this business while the kids were little. They've all grown up, left home, and I'm coming up for my 20th anniversary.
Wonderful. And marketplace is a very tricky type of business structure or business proposition because you need to kind of onboard two different markets, isn't it?
Yeah. If
Why
you
did
haven't
you?
got lollies on the shelf, you've got nothing to sell.
Yeah, and so how do you go about, youngster.co is similar. It's a marketplace, and we find it's challenging for us, especially to recruit elders. But so how do you go about, addressing both markets?
Yeah. Um, and it's also difficult when you don't have a brand reputation or reach of your own. And so one of the things that I was fortunate because I'd been a freelance marketer, I was contacted about 6 months after I'd started Red Balloon by one of my clients who said, oh, we need you to come in and do a gig. And that client was Xerox. And they said, we want you to come and do a marketing gig. And I said, oh, look, I'm really not doing that anymore. I've moved on to this Red Balloon thing. And they said, oh, well, what's that? And I told them, and they said, oh, that'd be really useful as a sales incentive program. And at the time, we only had 50 experiences in Sydney. And this is to your point, like I had to beg to get those as experiences. And most of them were very, they were like, oh, we've heard about this before. You've never seen customers. At one of them, I remember a horse riding experience at Centennial Park, and I had to convince her to buy a computer. She's like, I don't want to buy a computer. Nobody's ever going to use that stuff. Like, we're talking way back when. And so we had 50 experiences, and I spoke to Xerox, and they said, you know, it'd make a really good sales incentive, but you need to be national. And I said, oh, I can be national if you'll be a testimonial. And they said, well, we'll be a testimonial if you're any good. So, you know, that's said about it. But when they launched it, and, you know, it was 3 or 4 months in the making, and I called on. So this is the trick. Supplier found supplier. So I went back to the 50 that I'd begged, borrowed a steal to get, and I said, hot air balloon partner, Balloon Aloft, who do you know elsewhere? And they told me who was trusted in the other states. And so it was about who I already had to help me find others just like them, rather than having to do it. And the other thing is that we kind of put a bounty on it, that anybody who referred, and we still have it, anybody who refers an experience, we give them $100 Red Balloon voucher to thank them for recommending a new supplier, because it was all about supply. And then once we had that supply, it kind of grows itself. But supply is actually everything. If you don't have the youngsters as it comes to you, then you can't build the trust with the elders, and youngsters are probably going to find each other and go, hey, you can earn a few bucks. It's really lovely. You'll feel great. So I think that video will serve you, but also then maybe there's some financial thing that actually helps thank them, or they get some credits or something like that. But that really worked for us. And then the brand association of working with businesses, which I know you do really well.
We haven't announced it yet, but we've recently partnered with the Duke of Edinburgh. And, you know, one part is to encourage youngsters to volunteer for the service, where they get certain credits and badges. And
that's amazing.
Life skills, and they will be announced shortly. But it helps us to get a reach. So we get quite a lot of schools from Victoria with kids who want to help, because, you know, one of the challenges was through COVID-19, we were not allowed to go to aged care facilities anymore. So we transitioned everything online. But now the Duke of Ed says this is great activity for our youngsters to engage with the elders, help them to go online. So yeah, we do want to utilize this type of channel approach, and I totally understand it. So from your perspective and grinding through the startup and going through the early stages, when you went through Red Balloon, what was beside Xerox and going national, and you had to deliver on the quality and to be the trusted resource, what was the key part of becoming the trusted resource?
The thing was, this is so uninteresting, but it's systems and processes. So because you can't actually scale a business if you don't have systems and processes. And there was a point back in, like, I don't know, 15 months into the journey where, you know, every phone call seemed to be different, and they wanted something else. And most of it was about quality control, of making sure the experience on the website accurately reflected what was delivered on the day. And what we did was create service levels agreements and contracts of engagement with our suppliers. And there's an 11-point check. We've had to add another one, of course, now for COVID safety and governance, but to make sure that what appears on the website is part of their service level agreement. And that helped us navigate when you've got two sets of customers. The consumer is not always right, and we have to protect our supply, because if you just keep beating up your supply and saying it's not right, it's not good enough without quantifiable. The other thing is we made the customer feedback transparent to our suppliers so they could see it in real time. And later on, we use NPS scores so they can see their own personal NPS scores, and they know they're going to get a phone call if it gets below 4, you know, or gets less than 4-star rating. That's not the NPS score. If they're beginning to get anything lower than about a 60, in an NPS score, we'll be on the phones to them. Or if we see massive fluctuations, means they've got inconsistency in service. So it was actually the systems and processes that built the trust in the brand over and over again. Last year, we served 600,000 experiences. We delivered 600,000 customers to small businesses around Australia, which represented $85 million and $850 million worth of economic impact to local communities. But we can't do that one by one. You can't have to check 600,000 orders to make sure they're okay. And back to this area of cash flow, having lived in the quote and hope area, one of our key differentiators is we pay our suppliers before the activity. They are never out of pocket. And, you know, I know what it's like to be in small business, and cash is everything. And there's nothing more stressful than waiting for cash to arrive. And I encourage anybody on this call to look at how cash flows through their organization and what is causing them stress about their cash, and really to spend energy and time on that, because it will give you relief and it will give you power.
Yeah, that's incredible. I totally understand, you know, the chasing of unpaid invoices. And it's I had a couple of businesses. It was one of the biggest burdens and task I don't like to do.
Yeah, it's hard, and you know, I would give my heart and soul to these businesses, and then I'd be begging to be paid. And I remember one, and this is we're just putting this on the World Wide Web, I just remembered. But anyway, there was one, and I did their whole marketing plan. It was a brand called Skins, which everybody probably knows. And he never paid me for it. He never paid me. And he said, oh, I thought that was just your pitch document. You know, you were just presenting what you were going to do. I'd done all this research. I'd laid out the whole marketing plan. And he never paid me for the logo design or anything. And, you know, then he goes off and sells it to private equity, and it's a massive business, and I never got paid. And it was basically the end of the story. So you could say, well, I'm glad he never paid me, because I then started Red Balloon and did something else. But it's so awful and humiliating, and people don't realize that it's our gift and our of what we do, and we need to be valued for that as human beings. And it's terribly depressing when we don't get paid.
Yeah.
Anyway, last year I hear he went into administration, the private equity firm, but whatever.
Going back to, you know, you visited Coffs Harbour before, and I'm curious to know if Coffs Harbour has potential and has some experiences, and I don't know if there are many experiences on the Red Balloon platform, but I would love to increase, you know, the number of people coming from Sydney or Melbourne from the corporates coming to the Coffs Coast and promote the Coffs Coast. Do you think Coffs Coast has much to offer?
Oh, of course. And you know I do. You've completely set me up. That's what they call a Dorothy Dixer-Tony. I just adore, and look, this is the funny thing about what's going on at the moment. And whoever's here from Queensland or Melbourne or the places that we can't travel to, but Queensland and Western Australia particularly keeping their borders closed, I think is really silly, because in New South Wales, we have a population of 6 million. And quite frankly, you can't get a room anywhere. I cannot get you a booking and a glamping experience anywhere in New South Wales until February. So, you know, anybody who wants to start a business in glamping anywhere up the northern coast from Sydney to Coffs Harbour, we will sell it in, you know, just hands over fists. So people want to get out of the city. They want to support community. And right now we just need more availability. So we have people going out into New South Wales, and it's why we're seeing such good growth. It came out from the RBA this week that we're getting growth in New South Wales. Whereas Queensland population and West Australians population is not big enough to support their own tourism industries. Whereas New South Wales, in fact, is, because we're not leaving the state. We've got plenty to offer here, from the snow in the south. We've got the desert in the west, and we've got the tropics in the north, and the tropical beaches that you have from, you know, the northern coast up to the border. So I actually think it's going to be the other states that miss out by keeping their borders closed, because people are adjusting their behaviours, and people have booked their Christmas holidays, they've booked their summer holidays, and nobody's going north. And I think it's really, really short-sighted. They, you know, you don't say open the borders, let's all come. We've made our plans. So back to your point, the more experiences that you can send us in the Coffs Harbour, please send them. We can sell them. We want to promote regional Australia. It's a big commitment that we have as part of our EGC program is all Australia and all New Zealand, by the way. It's not just Australia. We are very, very much about supporting regional communities. So anybody got any leads for me? You want to introduce our team to the economic development, however it's going to go, I would love to see that we have 20, 30, 40 in the region, and it creates a destination for us that we can really promote.
What I love is the approach to corporate. Maybe you can actually do your pitch on Red Balloon to our listeners and viewers.
Oh, you want me to? I just happen to have it open, which is actually, we didn't set this up.
No, but Red Balloon has been supporter, and I want to see the local businesses benefiting from it. You know, on one side you pay businesses or experiences pay commission to Red Balloon, but if you bring, you know, the whole corporate sector from Sydney and Melbourne to the Coffs Goals, why not? So explain us why the experience.
Well, if you let me share my screen, I'll run through my.
And this is, by the way, this is not rehearsed. This is
I know. I just literally happen to have it open, but it'll be a nice insight into our business model, and people might learn from our business model. So let me in.
You want to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay, I'll just make you a co-host.
So I literally just pulled this together. I think everybody can see that now. Just to give us an overview of where we're up to, because in terms of consumer sentiment, it is about making every moment count and every dollar we spend count into our community. This is a little video that we'll play here that we probably don't need to play or talk through, but often I talk over this to just talk about the importance of experiences and why people connecting is so important.
By the way, before you go, I'll jump in because we just got a recent announcement that there's going to be skydiving mecca created, I think, in Maxwell or Nambucca Head somewhere. So really close. It's like a center for skydivers.
Fantastic. And we'll sign them up before they sober up. No, So we always speak to our purpose, and our purpose is to shift the way people experience life, the importance of human connection. So, and that also drives me in my own personal of where I spend my time. So, you know, because I came here today, I don't know the impact I'm going to have, but maybe I've shifted somebody's experience of life because they've learned from our thought leadership or, you know, our experiences or their business. For us, success is very important. We need to know when we are successful. And our big, hairy, audacious goal is to serve and experience sustainably every second somewhere on Earth by 2030. And that almost seems impossible or improbable until you look at where we're up to on our BHAG and our big, hairy, audacious goal growth. So, you know, way back in the day when I started, I think the first year we sold about 300 experiences. So it doesn't even make the list in terms of the seconds. But you'll see here, the little blue numbers are how many experiences that we are serving every second. So I beg your pardon. So we are serving one experience currently every 39 seconds. And you can see that for 2021, we see a growth in 2021, we're expecting to serve an experience every 21 seconds. And when you think about that velocity, that's what drives us, because we know that we're fulfilling on our purpose of shifting the way people experience life. And for every single one of those, that represents a customer that's gone to a small business in Australia. And that's what drives us. This particular time that we've been in has been incredibly challenging. I've worked with many of these experience suppliers for 20 years, and hearing what they've gone through has been unbelievably traumatic. There's no point being in business unless we haven't got a framework of how we do business. And so these are our values that we live by, and I suspect that it's even more important than ever. In April, we got rid of our workspace in Sydney because we've been doing a bunch of acquisitions. We have a team of about 110. We had a floor in a co-working space. We decided to leave that and save those dollars and actually spend it on sales and marketing. So we are a completely remote team, which means that we can employ people anywhere, which has actually really freed us up in terms of where we're finding talent. And there's no reason why we can't employ people from Coffs Harbour now, for instance, which, you know, we might never have considered before. But it is our values and how we do business that keeps us united. And this has been the toughest year ever. And this is actually the sales pitch. This is what I say to people: make this end of year one to remember. So most people aren't able to get together for Christmas and for Christmas parties, but have a standout Christmas. And we're finding that we're being contacted by lots of corporations who are saying, actually, I haven't spent anything on stationery. I've spent nothing on our office expenses. We haven't got travel, entertainment, and we're definitely not having a Christmas party. Maybe we could swap that into experience vouchers. So that's what as I said, we are a conduit from big business to small. We connect people. And for every dollar that's spent with us, it turns into $10 in community. It is going to be a very, very important year to celebrate. Not only about putting it behind us, it's been a busy year. We've asked more of our teams and our people than we ever have before and to work differently. And it's our job to make sure it's easy. We're one of the few platforms, in fact, nobody else knows what's open. And the only reason we know what's thawing in Victoria, we have a project called Thaw, is because we're on the phone with them. A little bit of luxury this year goes a long way. $100 spent on a red balloon voucher for somebody to go and get a chocolate walking tour or go and have a wine tasting experience is far more valuable than it's ever been before. And as I said, the why red balloon is about this. Now, this is the most important thing. If you think about your own sales presenters, understand the impact that you're having and the job you're being hired to do. So we are a conduit. We have more than 3,000 corporate customers. Salesforce, Atlassian, Commonwealth Bank are just some of them, but MetLife, we've got incredible supporters in corporate and they want to support local communities and they don't necessarily know how. As I said, when people buy a $100 voucher with us, we take our little clip of the ticket. That money gets paid to the supplier before the activity. It costs nobody. It costs nothing for a supplier to list with us, but they have to meet our quality criteria. And but as Balloon Loft was saying, they said, yeah, but when you send us, let's say $100 worth of a ticket, it ends up as $300 in my pocket because they'll buy another ticket, they'll buy a drink, they'll buy a souvenir. But he says the best thing is that it ends up at about at least another $700 in the hunter because they buy accommodation, they buy wine, they, eat out at restaurants. And he said, so for every dollar they spend with you, it ends up at $10 in community. And that's been a really powerful message for us talking to corporates and also to government about the impact that we're having. But you can't do that unless you've got the framework around it. And trust is materially important. Red Balloon brand represents trust. The community spirit in which we operate. It is about emotional connection and the storytelling. We're very socially aware. We do have an ESG program or a C program in terms of sustainability and contribution, but it's also being socially aware about what is right in terms of consumer or customer sentiment right now. And consumer sentiment is about buy local. It is about supporting Australians and job growth. And I know for a fact that because of the work that we've done, we've created 50,000 jobs within our network. One of our experienced partners earlier, as we went into lockdown, a gin distillery in Victoria, he used to host about 8 people a week in his gin experience at his location. He did try all of the things of going into producing sanitizer, but it's not as easy as they think because it's highly, highly flammable. So there's a lot of controls around that. And so we encouraged him to do virtual gin tasting. So what he did was create these sample packs and send them out to customers. And then they would dial in for the gin tasting. Now, the thing is that he was delivering these packs to Darwin, to South Australia, people who were never going to come to his cellar door. And so in that first month, we sold about 400 of these activities. So he went from kind of 8 to 400 and he had to employ somebody to actually run this business. Now, the difference being for him as a supplier was he can speak to his own customers, but they already know what his gin tastes like. He's looking for new customers. So it became a sampling exercise for his business, which how the economic multiplier works in what Red Balloon does and why our suppliers come to us. So, our job is to create incremental business for our suppliers. And that is the message that we give them and why they're happy to pay us a clip of the ticket. And that's the way we work. So but our job is to make sure they're going to be fabulous. It's a marketplace with assurance program to make sure they all abide by all the laws in the land. And as I said, we have a high quality rating. And in 2019, we put $85 million into community, which is $850 million worth of economic impact. This year we were going for $1 billion, but we may miss that out. So what we're actually selling, this is, you've got to actually tell people how to use what you're doing, what job you're being hired to do. We can take an experience voucher and we can basically put it on anything. We can put it in a text, we can put it on a personalized gift card, we can have it on a digital card, we can put it in a gift certificate and have it delivered with we've got a responsible range to make sure that we have a range that is that is sustainable to the planet, which is probably why we can't get any glamping. We've got Christmas themed gift cards, and this year, because a lot of people can't get out and about, they're looking for a little bit more, so we have a range of hampers. So think of a craft beer delivered to you, but in it comes a brewery tour, so you can take it at some point in the next 5 years, or a pasta making kit, but you also get the Italian cooking class to go with it. And that's been really popular, particularly when a lot of people are not comfortable or can't get out really and still aren't getting out and about. Just a summary about our footprint and how big we are, and to give our corporate clients confidence in our reach. And the other thing that we like to talk about is the breadth of our range, so that people know that we're supporting the whole of community and regional. And one of the things that we've done through this time is work with Tourism Australia and Destination New South Wales and the tourism bodies, because they're looking for real accountability also in their media spend. And we can definitely show them exactly how many experiences were booked as a result of the promotion that we're doing. So that also, as I said, is how many are direct live in terms of bookings, what's open. And also we often go for exclusivity, and having something exclusive, something to consider for your own businesses, because that's a key differentiator when it comes to people using Google as a competitive analysis. It's very hard for them to shop and compare when we have exclusives. So that's a barrier of protecting a moat around our business. So as I said, I've worked with small businesses for 20 years, and it's been a really, really tough time. Global ballooning, actually it was Balloon Aloft. Well, I've worked with global ballooning as well for 20 years, but Balloon Aloft tells the story that when we started together, they had one balloon and 700 passengers. And last year they had 19 balloons and 23,000 passengers. And we made it 20 balloons because the one behind me is my red balloon. I don't own a car, but I own a red balloon. And unfortunately this year it's been in the box more than out of the box. But we've grown together. And I think that's the other thing, is when you start a business, you don't realize the longevity of relationships. Business is all about relationships. It's all about trust. And it's not about doing a deal today. It's about how do we grow together. I was up in southern Queensland a few years ago, and I was sitting next to this guy at a speaking engagement, and he said, "Naomi, I have been a supplier to Red Balloon for 7 years." And I go, "Oh, what do you do?" And he goes, "I'm the world's best paddleboarder." And I said, "Oh, fantastic." He said, "You deliver me 80% of my customers." He goes, "I can't work that digital marketing stuff out. One day I spend $5, I get a customer, the next day I send 10 and I don't." He said, "What I like about you is you just deliver me customers." And of course I said, "Well, where do the other 20% come from?" He said, "The traditional way. I put flyers in local hotels and so forth, and at the airport." So, our job is to make sure that these fabulous, fabulous craftsmen, artisans and gifted world champions are world champions, and we just are their outsourced marketing partner, and that we gave them a brand. And it's really these stories that keep me going. I like to show people who the leadership team is. I don't do this on my own. I hate it when I see an article, she did this and she did that. I honestly didn't. All I did was make sure that I have fabulous business partner, David Anderson, and a really, really great leadership team around me. They are just a fabulous team, and we are incredibly close. Gemma, who you can see there, she started with me back in 2003. So we've been on a 17-year journey together. And all this team, we've been together for quite some time. And I like to leave people with a statement, you know, for 20 years, I've brought Australians together, and to get to the other side, we must come together, make every moment count. So that's my sales pitch. I can't believe I gave that to you. I've never done sales pitching
great.
for
Well done.
speaking. But I guess it's good for you to kind of see how I present the business, because from this you'll be able to see, well, how am I presenting my own business? Because it is about the stories and the emotional connection, and to be able to show people what they can do. We can stop sharing now, but you know what they can do to help. And out of the bushfires, I was telling the stories of some of our suppliers who've been really hit hard by the bushfires. And people just want to know what they can do. And if they think their corporate credit card can buy a few vouchers and they've made a difference, it makes people feel good. So that's
it was such a great pitch. And I think not only the startup grind community worldwide will enjoy to see how a shark actually pitches.
It's me being very passive, by the way, you know, keeping the energy low. And by the way, just to finish off, there's my QR code there. So if you want to stay in touch with me, every 2 weeks I send out a little update of what I'm learning. And I know you get it, Tony, but just dial that and put your little details in there. And please, everybody on this call, stay connected, because I learn a lot and I want to share it with others. And I think that's the most important thing.
If you don't know QR code, you just hold your camera to it and you should open up a browser that leads you to a sign up form. And just for everyone's benefit, there were some questions about NPS, Net Promoter Score. Some people might not know what it is. And what I love about entrepreneurs, you know, when life gives you lemon, you squeeze them.
That's right. Like lemonade.
That's right. And what I learned from your pitch right now is how you help also those experienced providers to scale their business in uncertain times. So if we get hit something like COVID-19, how can I actually use it to my advantage and grow the business and do the tasting and, you know, line up the customers for the future and send out the trials?
I think one of the most important things that we've done is every 2 weeks we have a webinar with our suppliers and we tell them what's going on and we listen to their questions and what they're worried about. But the most important thing is that they have a pipeline from us and they can see their future bookings. And knowing that they have bookings out for 6, 8, and we extended vouchers to being 5 years, and knowing that we can do that means that it has confidence for them to invest in their people, the skills and the capital that they need, because they have future bookings. And that's line of sight to a pipeline is actually what every business wants. And I think that has been a really clear differentiator with anybody else that has tried to come into this game.
I've got some questions coming up.
Oh, good.
Katrina.
Thanks, Tony. Hi, Naomi. Lovely to meet you. I was actually looking through your book, Ready to Soar, over the last week, and there's some really poignant moments that you've had right from the start. And there was one where you're talking about where you're just fresh out of uni and was working at your employer's site where they made you go through a database for 9 months and bring all that together. And then just when you thought, you know, you had your seat at the table and they wanted you to run a newsletter and you had quite a reaction, which is fair enough. But what I wanted to ask you is those sorts of experiences, did they make or break? You know, could you bring them into the future of your entrepreneurship, or were they something that fueled you to make you never want to go back to something like that again?
You know, it's so funny you say that because you know, these things, if you don't have rain, you don't get rainbows. And one of the things that I'm worried about more about young people is actually working together with people on a really tough project. It galvanizes relationships and you create this incredible team. So from that time, I still have really, really great friends, like all these years later. And I have been jesting with people that I started my business at home 20 years ago, and here I am at home. There's nothing changed. And one of the things that I did when, you know, we had no idea what was going to happen, and of course we're far further through than we thought. But you know, if we think back to March and April, we were all very fearful as business owners. And the first thing I did was actually go back into an operational role in the Red Balloon. I hadn't had an operational role for years. And I chose to be the acting head of our B2B team. And the reason being is, you can see from my presentation, is because I get to talk to customers, and it is the only way to know what's going on. So even now, even still after all these years, where I get my energy from is from listening to customer stories. And I believe any entrepreneur, any founder, or any business leader, if you disconnect from the humanness of what it is to be in business, even if you're running a SaaS business, it doesn't matter what your business is, understand the experience and stay close to it. And that's what I chose to do through this time. But I can tell you, I've been stamping my feet a little bit this year as I've been writing newsletters and looking at databases. And I've been complaining to my business partner, oh my goodness, I'm doing what I did 20 years ago. And he said, well, you should be good at it by now.
So true.
You know, this is what it is to be an entrepreneur. You just do what needs to be done. And I guess I learned those lessons from being in the corporate world. You actually just have to do the work. There's no choice.
So good. And we, Katrina and I, we quite often engage around how to, you know, motivate each other. But ultimately, talking to customers, it helps so much to line up the business to make sure you define the product market fit and you deliver what the customer wants. And so true. We have another question from the audience where there's a question if they offer workshops or weaving workshops. Do you offer anything like that, experiences like cheese making workshops or weaving workshops?
Absolutely. We've got a perfume making experience. And so, you know, we have a very broad customer base and we are very inclusive. So what we tend to do is we'll trial an experience. So each of the brands, we now have more than Red Balloon, we have Adrenaline, we have Lime and Tonic as part of the Big Red Group. But we will look at which brand it belongs in, and then we'll trial it and see how it goes. But we have whole sections, particularly on artisan, you know, whether it's pottery making, and we've got all of those things. So whether we specifically have weaving, I don't know, but should we? Well, if we're selling those other sorts of things, I think we should. So yeah, we are always open to new ideas, and and things come in and out of fashion.
Yeah. What about the nature-based tourism? So there's quite a lot of interest to spend more time in nature. Do you find there's an increase in this ecotourism?
Yeah, so that's why we've launched this responsible range for ecotourism, basically. And so we have all of our ecotourism and in that particular range, and that will be a massive push for us. So anybody who's got an eco or a sustainable business or sustainable artisan work and so forth, we would really love to hear from you, because that's a range that we're working very hard on. We think it's a very important role we need to play in the community, is talking about responsibility and sustainability.
Would it be possible to get some insights about the growth, that there's a growing trend, and that will justify also to our councils to focus more in this area?
We know what sells and what doesn't sell by category. We know the seasons in which things sell by category. And it's a little bit, the data is really skewed right now because of border closures. So New South Wales, so we're getting growth in Queensland, really, really good growth in Queensland from Queenslanders, really good growth from Western Australia, from West Australians. South Australia is going through the roof, New South Wales, and it's only Victoria that's letting down the team. So what we've found is intrastate is really, really powerful right now. And people are shopping in their own backyard, buying local. So there is no doubt that there is a view to sustainability. But I think in terms of our actual range, it's hard to give you kind of year on year or growth rates, because the world is different this year than last year. So we've got growth where we didn't necessarily think we were going to get it. And sustainability is part of that.
We also have quite a strong focus in Coffs Harbour on Aboriginal communities, and you know there seems to be more interest in the First Nations people and Indigenous experiences. Do you find that as well? What is your experience?
Yeah, we've dabbled with the area. In fact, I had a conversation last week with Adam Goods, who has a wonderful program for youth and youth scholarships. with the Go Foundation, but his actual job, that's his foundation with Mickey O, but his actual job is about creating Indigenous communities. So particularly for defence and government contracts, they do want to buy from Indigenous businesses, but it's actually really hard to do so. And how do we know what is Indigenous? So he's certifying businesses based on at least 51% ownership of Indigenous community, and then having up to or more than 60% Indigenous employees. So I spoke to him last week about the challenges that we have in the experiences space, because as we've tried to come on board with a range of Indigenous experiences, it actually can be quite challenging in terms of understanding who to talk to, how do they comply. We're very, very serious about our compliance and what we put our Red Balloon brand to. So there's further conversations for us to have, and maybe his business can help us with the certification process so that we can have a conduit into Indigenous, because it can be very challenging. So we need somebody of the first people to help us with that endeavour. So we don't make mistakes.
Yeah,
we want to do it right and have true Indigenous businesses.
Yeah. There's a question from Phil Orr. Phil, would you like to ask the question directly? Unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello, Naomi. It's a pleasure to meet you. I
Good
really
to
enjoyed
see
what you were saying. My business is called 25/8, which is actually a certified B Corp. But one of the things we do is run a couple of summits called Regional Growth Summits, and it's trying to create a bit more even playing field within regional communities. One thing that comes up though is, what's your thoughts on growing organically versus getting early investment for your business? Now, recognizing that you're a shark and an extremely good one, may I say, what's that advice to people who are starting up? Because we're seeing more and more people wanting to do that, but there's always that thing where they think that maybe they can get investment versus let's just start and try and earn some revenue. Do you have any advice?
I have never taken $1 of investment.
Wow.
So my business partner and I own 100% of the business, apart from the management scheme that we have. And we have taken debt from the bank. Commonwealth Bank is incredibly supportive of us for our capital growth that we need. And, debt is cheaper than investment. And often people say, I'm looking for investors. Investors are looking for an outcome, and they're looking for a return on their capital. And so really, a bit to the point of understanding how the cash is going through your business, I would much rather people get customers to fund their growth. In other words, sell something, make a margin, have a business plan, and be able to go to particularly look for grants, regional growth opportunities. People are wanting to, especially local government, state government, feds are all got grant programs. So, I talk about this in Ready to Soar, and there's many more of them since I wrote that book as well. But so I am not a big fan of people going too early with investors. I have seen people, let's even talk about one that we all know, Shoes of Prey. I mean, those poor guys, they took so many rounds of investment. I think they earned 1 or 2% themselves. And at some point, the entrepreneur becomes disincentivized to run and grow their own business. And all of those investors are looking for return. So there is a time for investment and a time to scale. But so it may not answer you because every business is different, and there is those businesses that are highly capital intensive versus a services business that might not be. So every business is different, but I would always encourage people to look at what else is available: grants, bank debt. Please avoid family and friends, because you want to still have them as family and friends.
That's great, thank you.
Well, a great question. Thanks, Phil. And Cass, you're next.
Thank you. Naomi, so Molly and I are working on a storytelling project for young people, and what got me was you were talking about stories and that emotional connection, and that's really what we want to achieve by putting videos together of young people that have left the area and have found their purpose and passion, and expose other young people that they can do that too. Is there someone that you think, in all your experience and all the people that you've been exposed to in business, that has done that really well that you think, yes, Cass, you and Molly should connect with that person just to get a bit of brainstorming or just to learn from their experience?
So particularly around how to tell an emotional story, is that what you mean?
More about maybe the content, and they've really hit the nail on the head and made an impact to other young people.
Yeah, before that, the way I got my passion for my business was listening to customers and talking with and understanding our suppliers and hanging out with them. And it's what comes via osmosis, and it's the very human nature of it. So I literally would listen to calls. I'd take calls. I used to call myself the chief experience officer, so that I would answer phone calls and people would be surprised that I was answering a call, but how else was I going to know? So the folklore of your business comes from observing the impact and the job you're being hired to do. And it's something that you really, really need to own yourselves, because once you get that DNA, it's who you are and it creates who you are. And then it can go to a copywriter, and then it can go to somebody, but because the authenticity comes from experiencing it. And you can see the authenticity in Tony's video. It's truly authentic. These are real people with real stories. And that's why it was beautiful and powerful. But you need that authenticity. But there's just, we've been over sanitized and over marketed to, and it's only the rawness and the realness. But that has to come from you as founders. That's your DNA, that's your folklore, and that's where your values will come from. And then at some point, if you need help with the words, that's fine, but you'll know what's right and wrong. Don't try and plaster something on top of it. That's what a lot of brands are doing wrong now. Gruen last weekend was talking about the thank you campaigns and how inauthentic they were. The first person who did it was really authentic. And then everybody goes, oh, that's a great idea. And you're like, thank you. Just doesn't cut it anymore. So yeah, authenticity is everything.
Love it. Thank you.
Excellent. Kev Smith, you are next.
Hi all, love your work. Naomi, been a big fan for a long time, and I totally agree with Coffs Harbour being the next tourism hotspot. I'm currently up here at Port Douglas, and we've got the same stuff down at Coffs, even better. I do a bit of, I'm a travel writer for a couple of 4Drive mags. But question to you, Naomi, what book are you reading now?
So at the moment I have, next to my bed, I have two. I've got Phosphorus. I've got, I'm embarrassed now because it's holding up my computer. Okay, so the computer just loaded. So I'm reading this. And for a novel, I'm reading Trent's new book that's set in Darwin. So his new book that just came out last week. So I have a novel on the go, Phosphorus, which is kind of inspiration. I was just sent this book as well on A Human Guide to the Future. So they're the three books that I've got on the go at the moment. And if I was in Port Douglas, I would be reading more than I am in Sydney. And now, Kev, very excited because I was up there for three months. And while I was there, I gave my passion to my hobby, which is painting. And I have 10 paintings hung in a gallery in Port Douglas. You can go and see them and tell everybody how fabulous they are. So there's a small, again, I'm supporting regional business. There's a store off the side street on Grant Street opposite the dive centre called Maker. And it was founded,
I saw that yesterday.
It was founded by a 19-year-old young woman during COVID to represent the local arts and artisans. And I thought, wow, if I leave some paintings with her, maybe it will help her with her profile in community. So pop in and say, hey, what's this thing that Naomi's up to?
I will.
Maybe write a story about her, because it really takes all of us to support the startup community. So it doesn't matter where I am. I'm always trying to support regional and startups in my own special way. Besides, you'll see my fabulous artwork.
All right, I'll do that too tomorrow. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Kev. Katrina, before you go with your question, maybe we can tap into that, because last week we ran a live session from the local Coffs Harbour Gallery, streaming the artwork by a Aboriginal artist into aged care facilities. Many elders are locked up and they cannot get out, and they would love to know why those paintings were painted, what's behind it. And we had the artist talking about each painting. And unfortunately, Naomi, you're not up there as yet. That would be great to actually create a live stream so we can broadcast it to the aged care facilities and youngsters. They're helping us to make that happen.
Yeah.
So another experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe you can have a chat to her about her local artisans. I mean, I think it's amazing. But I am going to have a showing here in Sydney as well coming up. But and again, I'm putting it in a retail location because we want people to come into retail. And I think retail needs a refresh of more reasons of why you go to retail, not just to necessarily buy something, but to experience something. So I've got a showing coming up here at the end of the month, which I actually need to work on.
So, Katrina, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I actually understand trying to get work together or visual artwork together for a show. It's quite an effort, but good luck with that. So another question I have for you is your amazing slogan that inspires me is if it was up to me, or if it's meant to be, it's up to me, which I find really inspirational. And again, in your book, I refer to that. You were talking about one of your drivers is the fear of failure. That's the thing that sort of kept you driven for a while. But I wonder if you can lean into talking to anybody that has a fear of success and how they might overcome something like that.
Yeah, I do see this sometimes is that, and I'm going to be gender specific, and I don't usually, but sometimes women-led businesses, at some point they don't want to give up control. And actually, to really scale a big business, you can't do it all yourself. And I think one of the things that I've done well is step aside as CEO 10 years ago, find myself a fabulous business partner who has the experience in running global businesses and M&A, and so that I can follow my passion, which you can hear, still play to my strengths, but have really great business leaders. And so I think that can be one of the greatest challenges is people limiting their own growth by realizing that they don't realize they're getting in their own way. Christina Carlson, she stayed as the designer rather than being the CEO of her business. And I think they've come through administration. And, I also even look at Janine. Janine Ellis is such a great friend, and her role of being ambassador and having professional CEOs in her business to, at some point, to get out of her own way. She follows her passion, does what she needs to do, but she's got the real financial and all of the heavy lifting done by professionals. And that's what we've done at Red Balloon. So at some point you can't do everything, and you've got to get out of your own way and realizing your love load lifts, your strengths, where is your superpower, and play to your superpower. And I think that's really important to allow your business to truly grow. It was Gemma, actually, who I mentioned before, who at some point said, you're strangling this, you're strangling your baby. And I'd become such a bottleneck. I wish we could find that email that she sent me, because it was a pretty powerful call to have somebody who loved the business and loved me enough to actually tell me how it was. Yeah.
Thank you, Naomi. Last question, I think, before we head off. It's almost 1 o'clock. The time flies. Adrian, what is your question?
Excuse me. Unmute. Excuse me. Sorry. I am so grateful for your message, Naomi. It's like talking to a kindred business soul, and I'm loving every moment of it. Tony, I would love to know that we could access this as a powerful tool for anyone in business. This last hour that you've recorded is phenomenal. It's basic 101 good business advice. Obviously, there's pearls of wisdom in there. I'm not disregarding that. But I really, really would love to be able to access it for people who want to start a business, young or old. For me, and you may want to take this offline, Naomi, I have no problem having either an email or a conversation if it's not appropriate at this time. You build credibility, you raise the standards of your associates, your suppliers. Love it. You effectively have an ownership and a piece of every business that you work with, every supplier. I adored it, and you raise the standard. Excellent. The suppliers are paid before the product they have to deliver the product. Hello, what supplier doesn't want that? I've never heard of that before. That is amazing. Cash is king.
It is one of our secret sources, I must admit. And it's a secret source, but if they if you pay somebody and you're sending them lots of customers, your customers are going to get the best service.
I love your business model. I want to know how to tap into something like that. The third thing was the economic driver and the multiplier for the local economy. So for me, as you know, I've got an interest in that in our region. I want to know, obviously I want to know what the clip is, what the percentage is that the supplier has to have. We can talk about that. But we also need to get this out there to all our councils. Like, how do we get your message to our councillors? I know you're working with the tourism board, but the councils need to understand that. I'm already clicking away. What businesses do we need to connect with the group, the RB group? That's a given. That has to happen. But I do know that in the last budget that they were releasing money for regional Australia. So there are grants, I believe, I haven't looked into it yet, but there are grants for people to start businesses or develop their glamping and their Airbnbs or whatever for these experiences. So this is a really exciting time. This message is given us for regional area, and I want to know how we can tap into it. I can talk offline, email, but thank you. It was great.
Look, and I do think this is not, for me, a traditional keynote in any way. And Tony and I wanted it that way. We wanted it to be intimate and answering questions and just, and so I'm really, really happy for us to take this video to, especially the economic development managers, because we you know, the hardest thing for us is getting a return on our time invested. And we spend a lot of time just in the kind of the, would you list? And if we have somebody locally working on our behalf as our ambassadors and advocates, it will serve the community, because we don't know who's who in the zoo. And whenever we get an experience, let's say in Orange or somewhere, we say, who else is great? And they refer their buddies and they know that it's good for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm really economic development officer of the councils. We need to get the message out there. So thank you so much.
It's so my pleasure. Yeah, it's so my pleasure. That's great.
Excellent. Hey, thank you everyone who joined us, and I hope everyone can say thank you to Naomi. And amazing.
It's so my pleasure.
So much goodness and so much good stuff to take away, and you know, I hope everyone will take a gold nugget from this and grow your business. And if you need any help, reach to each other and connect via LinkedIn and help each other. So I hope we see you at the next Startup Grind event. The speaker is not announced yet, but it will be hopefully just as amazing as Naomi. I'm not sure, but thank you again.
It's so my pleasure, and thanks, and send me through the recording as well. And then also, I'm desperate to get that link for your thing. I just think it's wonderful. You've really done a great job.
Great to have you as a supporter. Thank you so much.
So my pleasure. Thanks everybody. I look forward to the next time I can come and visit in person in Coffs. I really look forward to it. See you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.